Hey folks, Rick Manning, President Americans for Limited Government here. It's a Monday, and if it's Monday, it means we just came off a weekend, and we just come out of weekend means it must be another crisis that has been dealt to us. So the crisis of the moment is that the New York DA appears to be preparing to arrest President Donald Trump over charges that don't appear to have any legal basis in terms of what they are, but it appears that that's going to happen. It appears it's going to happen tomorrow. We'll talk about the case a little bit, but I want to start out by providing you this, what Speaker McCarthy had to say about it. So let's just take a listen to what Kevin McCarthy had to say.
It doesn't matter if this was President Trump or if this was a Democrat. It should be equal justice in America. And stop going after people because you have political differences. I see people all the time that I have political differences. I respect their opinion. I may disagree with it, but why would you ever try to use the law for it? And it goes directly against everything that this Manhattan DA has professed. He brags about lowering felonies to misdemeanors and not prosecuting. We've watched crime in New York where people are afraid to walk the streets. We watched campaigns, and I will tell you, one of the reasons we won races in New York is based upon this DA of not protecting the citizens of New York. And now he's spending his time on this. It doesn't matter if this was President Trump or if this was a Democrat. It should be equal justice in America. And stop going after people because you have political differences. I see people all the time that I have political differences. I respect their opinion. I may disagree with it, but why would you ever try to use the law for it? And it goes directly against.
Okay, that's a repeat. So you got what he said. That's let's just be clear. Kevin McCarthy's calling it like it is. He's saying that what this is nothing more than a political persecution. Let's see what Donald Trump tweeted, and let's hope we can read it. Let me make it bigger so we can actually get to it and read it. Okay, so now illegal leaks from a corrupt, and this is from President Donald Trump, on Twitter. This is on Truth Social. Now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States will be arrested on Tuesday of this week. Protests take our nation back. So that is what Donald Trump put out on Truth Social. And it's a direct call. He's denying any allegations. But let's just talk about what I hate to get into these allegations because they're so spurious. But I need to talk about it for a second. We are all familiar with the Stormy Daniels allegations, okay, and we're familiar with with what appears to be a fact that Donald Trump gave her $130,000 sometime in the late 2016. And because we don't know what she was doing, and I'm just going to call it what it is. Stormy Daniels and her attorney, Michael Avenatti, engaged in an extortion campaign against Donald Trump. They threatened to release information that may or may not have been true. They threatened to release information alleging that he had an affair with her. Subsequently, the Stormy Daniels, also known as Stephanie Clifford, which is her given name, went off and undercut everything she said and next thing she said in terms of whether or not the affair even occurred and all that kind of junk. Okay, so but there was an extortion that went on. They extorted a married man and threatened to embarrass his family and embarrass him, and if he didn't pay the money. He did pay the money. This is the first case in history that I know of where the person who was the victim of an extortion scam ended up being prosecuted for paying off the extortionist. it's akin to put it into New York City terms. And so maybe anybody's watching from the DA's office might understand it. Imagine if somebody from one of the mob families in New York had gone up, and I know they would never do this, but went up to, say, a restaurant and said, "Nice restaurant you have here. Really be a shame if it caught on fire. Perhaps you should buy our fire insurance." And that restaurateur then pays the fire insurance, and the mob boss gets off scot-free, got the money, gets off scot-free. But the person who actually, the restaurant owner, ended up being prosecuted because he gave the extortionist money. That's what's happening here. And it has nothing to do with the law. It has everything to do with the fact that there's this Trump derangement syndrome that cannot be cured, apparently. And in New York City, there's a heavy demand that Donald Trump be prosecuted for something. And the New York City DA is the Manhattan DA is accommodating them. That's all it is. This whole question has been looked at on by a whole variety of different prosecutors and said there's nothing there. What's more, the allegation that this was paid out of federal campaign funds is interesting, but it's not relevant. And the district attorney of New York has absolutely zero jurisdiction over federal campaign law. None, zero. They don't have a role to play. So what are we actually looking at? We're looking at an attempt to take down Donald Trump and to basically whet the appetite of the jackals of the left who've been tearing at Donald Trump for 6-7 years now. And, they impeached him twice on specious charges, completely phony charges. They impeached him twice. So what are you looking at? What are we actually looking at? We're looking at a self-serving DA who says, "Gee, I can make some bones. Maybe I could be Attorney General in New York out of this. Who knows? Maybe I'll even be able to be governor." Because if I'm the guy who actually prosecutes Donald Trump, I'm going to be the one who gets to sit there and have the pictures of Donald Trump in handcuffs. I'm the one who's going to be able to say that, and the crowd will roar. The jackals in the crowd, the left crowd will roar, totally ignoring the concept of innocent until proven guilty, totally ignoring the concept that you actually have to have a crime in order to prosecute somebody. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at political prosecution. And if this doesn't make your blood boil, nothing will. Because for one, I am sick of the left continually trying to take down Donald Trump. The irony, of course, is what they're doing by doing this is they're going to consolidate Donald Trump's support in a way that Donald Trump certainly couldn't. And it's going to create an environment where they're almost guaranteed that Donald Trump's going to end up being the nominee. And with that consolidated support, there's going to be a lot of, they'll say, "Oh, well, you were charged with whatever," and they'll be being adjudicated during the next campaign and all that. Bottom line is, a corrupt system is engaged in corrupt activities, and the person who's shining a light on that corrupt system is the target of their investigation. And I think America will see through this. We weren't born yesterday. We've seen 7 years of a intelligence of a prosecutorial malfeasance coming out of both Department of Justice and now out of the Manhattan DA's office. And so this isn't shock value. It just makes some of us angry. Now, I will tell you, I would not encourage anybody to rally. Certainly don't come to Washington, D.C. and do it. Because we know what happens in Washington, D.C. when you rally, on political stuff. If you're a supporter of Donald Trump, if somebody chains themselves to the Capitol building and they're protesting animal rights or global warming or something, those people get taken to the jail. They get released immediately on a $50 bond. If you show up here on this one, the same people who were anxious to throw people in jail for January 6th are going to be the ones who are going to greet you. And I would just, I'm just telling you, don't come to DC. It's not we don't have an equitable environment. So let's take a look at what some of you guys are writing in, because I don't want to talk too much. You notice how Anti-American Left TV tells us to do not look at the BS Biden crime family behind the curtains and their bank accounts in China. Yeah, it is somewhat interesting that we now have apparently Hunter Biden's own words saying that he got millions from China, and we've got his computer saying he had to share half with Dad. Now we know who Dad is. It's a complaining to his sister about it, I guess, that he was having to share so much with Dad, with the big guy. So, we know what's going on in the Biden crime family. And for those who, like Jonathan Turley, who, is really a civil libertarian, and has been very supportive in terms of going after the abuse of power by the administrative state and by the intelligence communities. But Jonathan Turley said, "Oh, well, you have to trust the process." Well, the problem is the process has been proven to be completely untrustworthy, and a process that had the Hunter Biden laptop in 2019, an FBI that had the Hunter Biden laptop in 2019, sat on it. In 2020, when it came out that it was going to likely come out, they went around to all the media and social media companies said, "Oh, something like this may come out, and it's going to be Russian disinformation," and then arranged for a bunch of intelligence agents, former intelligence people, to sign on a letter saying this has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, and do everything they could to squelch the laptop, and continue to do so. I don't expect that. I don't expect the process to work. I mean, come on. This is kind of like their holy grail. They're having the chance to have Donald Trump on trial, man. It's gonna be ratings bonanza for MSNBC, but it isn't going to be a fair trial. It's a kangaroo court, and we've got a kangaroo prosecutor, and this will do so much damage to the justice system and the expectation of equal protection under the law. It will do so much damage to the consent of Americans to the law and the expectation that the law works, that it's almost impossible to see this as not a deliberate attempt to destroy the fabric, the rubric of our society, which is that we're a nation of laws. And they're going to do it under that guise. No man is above the law, except for that doesn't mean that they prosecute you for nonsense. But they're going to say that and say they're protecting the rule of law when their objective is to destroy it. And it drives me nuts. Let's see here. I don't know what we're talking about here, so I'm going to just get out of that one. Maybe this is too big of a question, but why has Biden not been impeached yet and pulled from office? Because under a House system, you have to develop your case in the House, so you can have offered charges of impeachment, and then you have to bring those charges of impeachment to the floor, and you don't actually. And once you impeach, you have to immediately be ready to go forward with your case. And so, if there's going to be an impeachment against Biden, it's going to be after Jim Jordan's committee gets to the bottom of some of this stuff and goes through the process, so that they can create a positive and try to provide the evidence and lay out the evidence, so the average American can sit there and see it and say, "Holy, I didn't know that. I haven't been told that by CNN. I haven't been told that by," I guess nobody really watches CNN anymore. I haven't been told that by NBC, ABC, CBS. I haven't read it seen it as a headline in the Washington Post. How did that happen? How did this get by me? Jim Jordan has to lay out his case. His case has to be absolutely pristine to stand up to the battering it's going to take from the apologists of the left. And so that's the reason why charges have not been filed yet. There's legislation in place that can be utilized, but the fact is, we got to wait. Let Jim Jordan do his job, and go through that process so the House can develop their case in such a way that even the most Trump-hating Republican in the House of Representatives says we have to impeach Biden. And hopefully some Democrats agree. Let's just go back and see. Tired of Democrats finding crap to discredit President Trump. Carolyn, McCrory, I agree. If taxpayer money is going to be used, then let's use it for something like arresting Biden and his family for all the crimes they've committed. Hunter's admitted to it. He said he has to split all monies with big guy. That's who needs to be prosecuted. I agree, Carolyn. And given that the FBI's had that information in hand, given the fact they interviewed his business partner in 2020 and got what he had to say, and we're sitting here in 2023, and there have not been any charges filed, I'm pretty skeptical about the likelihood of our current Justice Department to do their job. I laid out the process on terms of impeachment, but the fact that Hunter Biden walks free is, with all the things that he's done, is just like, it's amazing to me. But it is what it is. It frustrates me. It saddens me, but that appears to be where we are with the criminal justice system today. We do have a two-tiered system of justice, and that's bad for America. These guys are intent on destroying our belief that the rule of law matters by creating such an egregious two-tier system of justice that people say, if I can't support this. And once you say, I can't support the rule of law, because the rule of law is not equally enforced, equitably enforced. Once you say that, the fabric of our society, the social contract of our society, gets torn asunder. And that's not something which is good for America. And so I know that, and it's actually one of the things that it's one of the reasons I have problems talking about stuff like this, because the rule of law does matter. And it kills me when I have to talk about people who abuse their privilege as prosecutors in this country, as intelligence agents in this country, who abuse their privilege to weaponize that rule of law and to turn a blind eye towards criminal activity on the left while prosecuting vigorously what might be criminal activity. It might just be bogus on the right. You have to have equal application. The failure of equal application, the fact I have to talk about it, hurts my heart, because the truth of the matter is this hurts America. And I didn't get into politics a long, long time ago because I wanted to hurt America. I got into politics because I want to build America and to be able to fight for the ideals that make America the greatest country on earth. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let's see. Wow, we did this one already. Carol, how you doing? It's yeah, I'm gonna do this. Okay, Crystal, thank you for bringing up Soros, because this DA is a Soros prosecutor. The one thing we know, or the Soros prosecutors take great pride in not prosecuting criminal conduct. They don't prosecute property crimes. They choose to plead down even violent crimes. They view their job as a job of establishing equity. And by equity, I mean, if you have creating an even if a majority of the crimes are committed against blacks, for instance, and are typically committed by blacks, they don't like it that the jails are disproportionately filled with black men, and they are. But that is, the law is, if you commit a crime, a violent crime, you go to jail. And the Soros prosecutors are desperate to try to break that rule of law. The Soros prosecutor in San Francisco was so bad that you had the entire city being terrorized, and every small business in the city, retailers seeing stuff just regularly flowing out of their stores with the full knowledge that even the police arrested the people stealing their goods, that they were going to be let back on the street on a misdemeanor charge. we saw, and so that prosecutor, who was an avowed communist, he got in San Francisco, they impeached him. Now down in LA, the prosecutor's doing the exact same thing, but he managed to survive an impeachment attempt. And he's continuing wreaking havoc on the laws of the state of California in the largest population center of California, about 13.5 million people in LA County. And he's turning the place into a lawless place that is, their goal is to keep up with San Francisco in terms of needles on the street and human feces everywhere. And it appears they're succeeding beyond anything that they might have imagined. Soros prosecutors the Soros prosecutor in St. Louis is the one who didn't arrest the people who were trying to attack that couple and who broke into the walled community and were threatening the couple who were brandished firearms to try to scare the Antifa people away, the BLM people away. No, they prosecuted the people who were on their own property brandished firearms. That's the Soros prosecutor. The prosecutor who was involved in the Michael Brown case that was in Ferguson, Missouri. That was, once again, Soros prosecutor looking at trying to go after the cops. The Soros prosecutors and the Soros elected local officials are the ones who want to defund the police, until it turns out that when they defund the police, they find that their city and their own homes are affected, at which point they want to rehire them. But what police officer is going to go work for a city council and a mayor who is going to basically say you're guilty until proven innocent as a cop, and put yourself in harm's way and put your family in harm's way and to try to preserve order in the city? They're not. It's the destruction of the American civil society, city by city, prosecution by prosecution. And that's why, folks, it's time to go out and make sure you vote in the local prosecutor races. Here in DC, in the DC area, we've got 3 local prosecutor, got a prosecutor primary here in Fairfax County. If you're in Fairfax County, make sure you vote. And make sure you don't vote for the prosecutor who is the current incumbent prosecutor. He's a Soros stooge who's letting people out of jail left and right, and resulting in higher crime rates. And that's the inevitable piece of this. So the New York DA is a Soros prosecutor. He doesn't, as Kevin McCarthy said, he doesn't prosecute crime. He doesn't prosecute violent felonies. He doesn't prosecute. He's basically at war with those who want to have equal justice under the law, those who want to have protections for their businesses, for their personal safety on the streets. He's at war with them, and he's on the side of the criminals. And so, not surprisingly, of course, he's going to go after Donald Trump, because he views his job as a political one and not as a law enforcement one. And as a result, he's going to engage. He's looking to engage in a political prosecution. Good old Soviet-style political prosecution. That's what we're looking at in this country, and it's both scares me and it makes me madder than I can describe. Okay, Jeanette, why don't we do something about this? Well, that's a good question. The capacity of the federal government to do anything about a rogue prosecutor who's an elected official in Manhattan is pretty limited. Now, you can look and see if money is money going from the Department of Justice for that prosecutor's office. You can see if that's occurring, and you can say, we're not going to give you any money because of your prosecutions. And based on what Kevin McCarthy was saying, I'm pretty confident there's going to be a pretty intensive review of of how the federal government is spending, is aiding and abetting this prosecution with an attempt to cut it off. But the bottom line is, it's not a pandemic, but it's a wholesale assault on our criminal justice system. And it's an assault on you and me, not just because we're not safe, and no matter what laws we get the state legislature to pass, these bozos won't enforce them. It's an assault on America. It's an assault on the rule of law. It's an assault on your expectation that if somebody breaks into your house, somebody steals your car, somebody points a gun at you on the street, that person, that the police will make a concerted effort to arrest that person, to find them, arrest them, and put them in front of a jury of their peers, and prosecute, and the DA will prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. It's an assault on that expectation. It's an assault. When you look at the criminals as being victims, then the victims then become the criminals. And that's what they're doing. They're turning everything on its head. And the way we can deal with this is effectively, we've got to cut it off. We've got to identify these prosecutors, and we have to vote them out. And we have to make sure the federal government isn't giving your taxpayers to fund their operations when their operations refuse to enforce the law fairly and equitably. Let's see here. I'm going to open this up because I haven't really talked about this much, but it's not really on point. But Gene, nice dog. Trump didn't stand up for people on January 6th and keeps pushing COVID vaccine accountability failures, lost respect for him. I'm going to put this into two parts. Okay. I'm going to do January 6th, first of all. Donald Trump was told very directly by his attorneys to shut up about it, because the objective of all of these investigations was to prosecute Trump. And so he couldn't. So practically speaking, he was in a position where he knew what they were doing, and he didn't step into the trap. And unfortunately, the J6 protesters were nothing more than pawns in the attempt to get Donald Trump. When they had all the facts, they knew for a fact that he did not incite the riot. They knew for a fact that inside there's very little video evidence of a riot at all. They saw the video of people wandering around with flags and taking selfies in the Capitol Rotunda. They saw the video of Jacob Chansley, I think his name, Jacob Chansley, being escorted with his horn hat on around the Capitol by Capitol police officers and put into the Senate chamber, and so they could sit up in the chair and they could get good photo ops, so they have a photo to put the whole quote unquote revolution, insurrection, and have a face of the insurrection. They saw that. They didn't care. Because they were trying to entrap Donald Trump and is saying something that could be used against him to prosecute him. So while it might be disappointing that he did not stand up for people on January 6th, there's a legal reason why he didn't. And you're seeing it in the Manhattan prosecutor's office right now, because if he had, we would have had him being prosecuted in federal court on the trumped up charge, excuse the expression, the trumped up charge related to January 6th. So, and then keeps pushing COVID vaccine. Let me differentiate between what Donald Trump did on the COVID vaccine and what Joe Biden did. Donald Trump put a process into place that many of us have problems with, and have problems that it was an expedited process. He was told he was dealing with something that could be the Black Plague, and so when you do what you can to try to get something that's at least partially effective or somewhat effective, and get treatments out that will actually make it so people survive the Black Plague. That's what he was told. Those are the actions he took. He should be rightfully proud that they managed to get something out. What they didn't do, though, what Donald Trump did not do, and we can't conflate these two things. Joe Biden's the one who said everybody has to get the vaccine. Joe Biden's the one who pushed for federal employees. If you don't get the vaccine, you get fired. Joe Biden's the one who's firing still firing military people out of the military because they wouldn't take the vaccine. Joe Biden's the one who won't even let a tennis player, the best tennis player in the world, come and play in the United States because he's not vaccinated. Joe Biden's the one who set up a regime that was designed to intimidate people and turned our healthcare system on its head and weaponized healthcare in America. Joe Biden did that. Donald Trump didn't. Am I somewhat disappointed that Donald Trump hasn't recognized that the vaccine may not have been everything it was stamped to be? Yeah, I wish he'd been more upfront about that from the beginning. But I don't want anybody to conflate the facts about what this man was doing to try to protect the country from what he called the China virus. I don't want anybody to conflate the facts with what Biden did, because sometimes it blurs together. And what Biden did was weaponize a disease in an attempt to take down freedom forever. That's what he did. And we can have a lot of discussion about the actions that Donald Trump had. I'm confident we will during the primary campaign. But the fact of the matter is, do not conflate what Biden did with what Trump did. Trump was operating in real time with 1,000 problems he was trying to solve. And sometimes things don't go right when you're trying to solve 1,000 problems. Trump did reopen the country in June of 2020 against the advice of everybody in the media. And truthfully, I guess it was probably in May rather than June, but truthfully, it was exactly what we were saying you should do. Americans for Limited Government stood up and said, no, you're shutting down the country. You gotta stop this. You're killing people. You're doing this is hurting, doing way more harm than good. We provided him over 100 videos through his staff of businesses who were shut down and were dying as a result of the shutdown, and appealed to him saying, you're doing more harm than good with this shutdown. And Donald Trump went against the advice of a whole lot of people and stood up and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. The curve has been flattened. We're not doing this anymore. It was the Democrats and Democrat governors who chose to keep their states closed until after the election, until after Donald Trump left office, at which point they reopened their states, many big states, and dramatically bumped the unemployment rate down because businesses were operating in business again. That was a political decision to punish their own population because they didn't want to have Donald Trump get credit for the revitalization and the shortness of the recession and the dramatic V-shaped recovery that occurred when we stopped the artificial stoppage of economic commerce in this country. So it was a political decision to shut down, keep California shut down, keep New York shut down, keep Pennsylvania shut down, keep a lot of big states shut down, keep Michigan shut down. And, those governors, they made that decision. But it was about politics. It wasn't about what was in the best interest of their people. So you can draw whatever conclusions you want from that, but I just want to make certain that we're talking about what Trump actually did versus what some would accuse him of having done. So we have a fair and honest discussion about what that was like. I'm going to go to the very bottom here and see if we got any new ones. Oops. I'll show one more. Yeah, I don't know. Andrew, once again, I haven't read Sam Abbo, so I don't know what to talk about. Let me conclude with this. The prosecution of a former president of the United States is unprecedented. There's a presidential historian named David Beschloss who was talking about the unprecedented nature of this. And it is. It's dangerous. The weaponization of the government against political rivals is dangerous. It's against everything America stands for. And the fact is, I think people have to finally admit, on the left should admit, that in 2016, they did not allow a peaceful transition of power to Donald Trump on January 20, 2017. It wasn't Donald Trump that stopped a peaceful transition of power to Joe Biden. It was the Democrats who stopped it, and the Obama administration, which stopped a peaceful transition of power to Donald Trump. And when the front page of the Washington Post says, basically says resistance begins, doesn't basically, says resistance begins now, and encourages public employees who are supposed to follow the direction of the political people, encourages them to resist. That's not accepting the results of an election. So when these bozos keep saying that we got to accept the results of the 2020 election, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and deal with the fact that you undermined our country for 4 years with impeachment after impeachment, with charge after charge, all proven false, while you covered up incredible just malfeasance that occurred during the Obama administration by some of his officials. So sorry if I'm not outraged in terms of this against Donald Trump. The left's obsession with Donald Trump is threatening to turn this country completely inside out. We have real enemies abroad. We have real enemies in China who want to take us down and are doing everything they can to defeat America on the world stage, and doing a pretty darn good job of it with the current administration in place. We have real enemies, real threats to freedom. Donald Trump isn't one of them. Get over yourselves and start being Americans for a change. That's my message to the left. And if you join me, send that message to the Democrats in Congress, your Democrat senators, and let them know that you're tired of the weaponization of government and their blind hatred to a duly elected president of the United States. And it's time for them to put some big boy pants on and get over it. With that, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow. And so hopefully I do not have pictures of Donald Trump in handcuffs. I'm just pray for the country tonight, please. Pray for the country tonight. With that, we're going to let you go. Take care. Bye-bye.